it back now.
Television. I'm a
Scrub daddy, but I'm not a scrub pimp. So,
But on this business, here's what always disturbs me. It's your approach to business.
There was a time when Shark Tank looked like the purest version of the American dream, a shining stage where vision met money, and one perfect pitch could rewrite a life. The lights were blinding, the music triumphant, and the sharks smiled like gods of capitalism. To millions watching, it wasn't just TV, it was faith made visible. Work hard, sell harder, and maybe, just maybe, you'd be chosen. But dreams have a price, and this one had teeth. Behind the booming theme music and perfect handshakes was a world of shredded contracts, crushed hopes, and backroom deals that never made it to air. Founders walked in chasing freedom and left entangled in clauses they barely understood. Some saw their empires built overnight. Others watched theirs quietly dismantled off-camera. The show promised an opportunity. What it delivered too often was exposure, the kind that burns. So was Shark Tank ever about innovation, or just exploitation dressed up as inspiration? And when we cheer for the dreamers walking into the tank, are we rooting for their success or salivating for their failure? Before Shark Tank became a global symbol of opportunity, its origins were far more modest. A simple idea born out of curiosity. What if business negotiations could be television? The show's lineage traces back to Japan in 2001, where Tigers of Money first introduced the premise of entrepreneurs pitching ideas to wealthy investors. The format soon spread to the UK as Dragon's Den, captivating audiences with the thrill of persuasion and the sting of rejection. By 2009, America, still reeling from a recession, found its own version in Shark Tank, a show that promised not just entertainment, but economic hope. The premise was disarmingly simple. Everyday dreamers enter a room filled with millionaires and make their case. If the sharks liked what they heard, they'd invest their own money in exchange for equity. Success meant more than funding. It meant validation, visibility, and the fantasy of turning a kitchen table idea into an empire. What made Shark Tank magnetic wasn't just the business, it was the theater. The confident walks, the nervous pitches, the dramatic music as offers flew across the room. It condensed the messiness of entrepreneurship into a sleek, digestible spectacle. Negotiations that took months in real life were edited into minutes of tension and triumph. And it worked. Viewers saw themselves in those founders, hopeful, trembling, determined. For a country that worships the self-made narrative, Shark Tank became gospel. Its sharks, Mark Cuban, Lori Greiner, Kevin O'Leary, Damon John, Barbara Corcoran, and Robert Herjavec, were cast not just as investors, but as modern oracles. They represented what people aspired to be: sharp, fearless, and impossibly successful. By the mid-2000s, the show had transformed into a cultural phenomenon. Products featured on air saw overnight spikes in sales. Entrepreneurs who once struggled to be heard now had audiences of millions. In a time of uncertainty, Shark Tank offered something intoxicating: the idea that in America, your big break could still come from a single moment, one pitch, one handshake, one deal. But hidden beneath the applause and glowing success stories, the cracks were already forming. Because while Shark Tank sold the dream of fairness and merit, television was playing by its own rules. By the mid-2000s, Shark Tank wasn't just a TV show, it was a movement. Every Sunday night, millions gathered to witness the modern ritual of ambition. The nervous entrepreneur stepping into the tank, the circling investors, the fate of a dream decided in under 10 minutes. It felt like reality television with a conscience. Part capitalism, part fairy tale. At its peak, Shark Tank embodied the American ethos better than any scripted drama could. It turned business into sport and millionaires into household names. Mark Cuban was the bold visionary, a self-made billionaire with street smarts and swagger. Lori Greiner, the queen of QVC, symbolized empathy and intuition. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, became the sharp-tongued villain audiences loved to hate. Damon John represented hustle and the hip-hop generation's entrepreneurial spirit. Each shark played a role, part mentor, part myth. The show became a launchpad for cultural icons. Products like Scrub Daddy, Bombas, and the Ring doorbell became legends in their own right, transforming from humble prototypes to multi-million-dollar enterprises overnight. A single deal could catapult a small business into retail empires, Target shelves, Amazon listings, Super Bowl ads. The Shark Tank effect became a real economic term, describing how a 5-minute TV slot could double or triple a company's valuation. For audiences, it was irresistible. The lighting, the countdown clock, the handshake, all crafted for maximum dopamine. It felt honest, inspiring, attainable. You didn't need a trust fund, you just needed a dream and the courage to defend it. The show turned entrepreneurship into entertainment and optimism into spectacle. Even the sharks themselves became celebrities. They weren't just investors, they were influencers, authors, motivational speakers, and social media brands. They appeared on magazine covers, TED stages, and commencement podiums, preaching grit and innovation. For a while, Shark Tank looked untouchable, proof that capitalism could still produce heroes. But the higher the pedestal, the longer the fall. As seasons went on, the line between television investment and real investment began to blur. Some deals never closed, others unraveled off camera. And the empire built on merit and mentorship began to reveal its cracks. Cracks that would soon split open in full public view. Because behind the smiles and sound bites, not every handshake was a happy ending. At first, the fractures were easy to miss. They hid behind the show's polished veneer. The laughter, the motivational speeches, the glimmer of possibility. But slowly, audiences began to notice something off. The empire that had once celebrated innovation and integrity started showing signs of its own hypocrisy. The sharks, who branded themselves as business geniuses, didn't always live up to their legend. For every Scrub Daddy or Bombas, there were dozens of failures. Deals fell apart, investments vanished, and the supposed winners of Shark Tank quietly went bankrupt once the cameras stopped rolling. And then came the humiliating irony, the deals they didn't make. In 2013, a small Detroit beauty startup called The Lip Bar pitched a line of bright, inclusive lipstick shades. The sharks dismissed it outright. Kevin O'Leary mocked the founders, calling their idea colorful cockroaches. But outside the tank, the world saw something different. The Lip Bar exploded into one of the most successful, Black-owned beauty brands in America, landing in Target stores nationwide and raising millions in funding, all without the sharks. Then there was Ring, known then as Doorbot, a young entrepreneur's smart doorbell idea rejected as too niche. 5 years later, Amazon acquired it for $1 billion, making it one of the greatest missed opportunities in the show's history. The irony stung even more when its founder, Jamie Siminoff, later returned to Shark Tank, not as a contestant, but as a guest shark. These blunders chipped away at the shark's aura of infallibility. But the real cracks ran deeper, into the ethics of the deals themselves. Contestants began revealing that many on-air agreements never materialized. The contracts signed under hot lights were often rewritten or canceled entirely once production ended. Take the case of Shelley Ayler, the mother who pitched her towel design show number. Lori Greiner appeared moved to tears, offering $75,000 for 25%, even writing the check on camera. But off-air, Lori allegedly changed the terms, demanding more equity. Shelley refused, the deal collapsed. Her business and her trust never recovered. Stories like hers multiplied. Deals undone by greed, by control, by clauses contestants never saw coming. What once looked like a platform for empowerment now resembled a stage for exploitation, where emotion was a prop and the dreamers were expendable. By the time viewers began asking questions, the illusion was already cracking. Shark Tank wasn't just selling hope anymore. It was selling control. And some of its biggest victims were the very people it promised to uplift. The illusion of Shark Tank, of benevolent millionaires turning dreams into success stories, finally began to unravel when the truth started coming out. What had once been framed as mentorship was now being exposed as manipulation. The cracks weren't just moral, they were personal, financial, and in some cases, devastating. One of the most shocking revelations came from Al Bubba Baker, a former NFL player who entered the tank in 2013 with his family's invention, the deboned baby-back rib company. His pitch was wholesome, emotional, and seemingly successful. A $300,000 deal for 15% equity with Damon John, one of the show's most respected sharks. But behind that handshake was a nightmare waiting to unfold. Once the cameras stopped rolling, John quietly changed the terms. $100,000 for 35%. Under pressure and starstruck by the promise of Shark Tank fame, Baker signed. Soon after, John appointed a tech partner, Nate Holtzapfel, to oversee the company's operations. Within months, the website malfunctioned, orders collapsed, and the Baker's business bank account was mysteriously emptied. Out of $100,000, only $8,000 remained. When the family begged John for transparency, he dismissed their concerns, reportedly saying, "This is business." The Bakers eventually lost their home, restaurant, and food truck. Meanwhile, John continued to promote their ribs as a $16 million success story. The truth was darker. The Bakers received only 4% of that revenue, barely enough to survive. When they spoke out, John retaliated, suing them, enforcing a gag order, and even filing a restraining order to silence their story. The Bakers broke their confidentiality anyway, publishing their ordeal in the Los Angeles Times. The expose ignited a public outcry. Fans were horrified that the same show that preached empowerment had allegedly destroyed a family's livelihood. Damon John denied wrongdoing, framing himself as the victim of false claims. But the damage was done. For millions, the mask had slipped. And that wasn't the only scandal. The sharks, it turned out, weren't just exploiters. Sometimes they were victims too. In one infamous 2013 episode, all 5 sharks invested in Breathometer, a smartphone breathalyzer touted as revolutionary technology for measuring alcohol levels. The founder, Charles Yim, promised accuracy, safety, and a future free from drunk driving. But the product didn't work. It underreported blood alcohol content, giving users false readings that could lead to deadly consequences. Instead of fixing the device, Yim used the sharks' money to fund luxury trips and parties, flaunting his wealth online while customers filed complaints. The Federal Trade Commission intervened, ordering refunds and condemning the company for deceptive claims. The sharks lost their investments, but worse, their endorsement of a faulty, life-endangering product made them complicit in a moral scandal. By now, Shark Tank's glossy image was cracking open on every front. Lawsuits, broken contracts, fake deals. The stories kept piling up. The narrative of mentorship had curdled into something colder. Power, greed, and control masked as generosity. The collapse wasn't a single event, it was a slow implosion, broadcast over years. And when the dust began to settle, one truth became impossible to ignore. The show that once made entrepreneurship look noble had turned into a mirror of everything corrupt about modern capitalism. Because on Shark Tank, the real sharks were never in the tank, they were running it. When the scandals began surfacing, the Shark Tank empire responded with what it knew best: marketing. The sharks went into defense mode, framing every controversy as a misunderstanding, every expose as a hit piece. Damon John released statements about false narratives. Kevin O'Leary doubled down on his honest capitalist persona. Mark Cuban distanced himself from the show's messier deals, insisting Shark Tank was about opportunity, not guarantees. But the damage had already been done. The more they tried to spin redemption, the more performative it felt. Instead of humility, viewers saw deflection. Instead of accountability, they saw opportunism. Damon, the man once seen as the underdog entrepreneur who built FUBU from nothing, had become a symbol of corporate callousness, accused of exploiting the very dreamers he claimed to champion. His reputation never fully recovered, and his public statements came across as carefully polished PR. Then there was Kevin O'Leary, who found a new way to monetize his fame, selling personal shoutouts for $1,200 to $1,500 per clip. In these videos, O'Leary would casually endorse almost any product, book, or company, rarely disclosing whether it was a paid promotion. Critics called it the final sellout. The man who once mocked scam artists had become the face of pay-for-praise marketing. Even the show itself tried to soften its image. Producers began spotlighting inspirational stories, featuring kinder edits and heartwarming arcs. But by then, the formula felt hollow. What once inspired faith in the American dream now resembled a commercial for it. Overproduced, overscripted, and disconnected from reality. The truth was simple. Redemption requires sincerity, and Shark Tank never apologized. It rebranded instead. The more the show insisted it was helping small businesses, the clearer it became that its real product wasn't entrepreneurship. It was spectacle. And for a generation disillusioned by false idols, spectacle wasn't enough anymore. The Sharks tried to save their image, but you can't rebuild trust with spin. You rebuild it with honesty, something money can't buy and television can't fake. Today, Shark Tank still airs, but the magic is gone. The empire stands, yet hollowed out like a brand surviving on nostalgia rather than integrity. Its ratings remain steady, but its reputation has changed. What was once hailed as the purest expression of entrepreneurship is now remembered as a parable about power and how easily it corrupts. Financially, the show continues to profit. Syndication deals, streaming rights, and spin-offs keep the format alive. But the cultural currency that once made Shark Tank inspiring has quietly depreciated. Audiences have grown wiser. The rags to riches fairy tale feels less like hope and more like marketing. Still, its influence can't be erased. Shark Tank redefined how the world sees business. It made entrepreneurship entertaining, turned negotiation into theater, and gave millions the vocabulary of valuation, equity, and investment. For that, it deserves credit. But it also taught a harder truth, that even the most uplifting systems can rot from the inside when greed disguises itself as mentorship. Behind every viral pitch and every emotional handshake were contestants who left disillusioned, bankrupt, or silenced. The same show that preached empowerment became a warning about what happens when profit overshadows principle. And yet, in its downfall lies a mirror, reflecting a culture that glorifies wealth, applauds domination, and confuses charisma for credibility. Shark Tank didn't just fail its entrepreneurs. It exposed us to our own complicity in worshiping the spectacle of success. Because when the dream becomes a commodity, the dreamers become disposable. And maybe that's the truest lesson Shark Tank ever taught. That in the end, the biggest deal of all was the one it made with the audience.